All right, today we're diving into one of the most interesting and honestly, one of the most misunderstood ideas in psychology, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's this wild concept that explains why some people can be so clueless about their own incompetence. And here's the kicker. It's a bias that gets every single one of us.
You know who I'm talking about, right? We've all met that person. Could be at work, could be a family member, someone who speaks with just absolute, unshakable certainty on a topic, but is completely, totally wrong. It's baffling. It can be so frustrating to watch, but what if there's a reason for it?
And there it is. That's the real twist here. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just some fun way to label other people. Nope, it's a mirror. It shows us a fundamental glitch in our thinking that affects all of us, revealing these invisible holes in our own knowledge.
So to really get a handle on this, we first have to accept a kind of uncomfortable truth. Most of us have some pretty big gaps in our knowledge, even about important, everyday stuff. We don't know what we don't know. Okay, let's start with some really basic science. A National Science Foundation survey found that this is the percentage of American adults who knew that the Earth revolves around the sun. Just over half. That means almost half the people in the survey didn't know a fact we all learn in, what, third grade? All right, how about something that really hits close to home, like money? In one study, only 56% of people could get two basic questions right about interest rates and inflation. I mean, think about that for a second. That means nearly half of us are out there making huge financial decisions without really understanding the basics. And this number, this one is just staggering. In the US alone, it's estimated that 90 million people have a tough time understanding basic health information. This isn't just trivia, you know? This can lead to serious problems, like taking medication the wrong way or not following a doctor's advice. The consequences are real.
This quote from David Dunning, one of the researchers who discovered the effect, just nails it. The problem isn't just that we don't know things. It's that we're often totally blind to the fact that we don't know them. Which, leads to the big question, why? Why is it so hard to see our own ignorance?
So, what is going on here? Well, this is what psychologists call the Dunning-Kruger effect. And at its core is this really powerful idea called the double burden of incompetence. So to put it simply, the Dunning-Kruger effect is this mental blind spot where the people with the least amount of skill in something are the most likely to think they're great at it. The less you know, the more you think you know. It's wild.
Okay, think of it like this. The skills you need to do something well, let's say writing a good essay, are the exact same skills you need to be able to tell if an essay is good in the first place. So if you don't have those skills, you're not only going to make a bunch of mistakes, you won't even have the tools to see that you're making them. That's the double whammy, the double burden.
And we're not talking about a small miscalculation here. In one of the original studies, students who scored in the bottom quarter on a test, their actual score was at the 12th percentile. They guessed that they had performed around the 60th percentile. I mean, that's not just a little off. That's a massive overestimation. Now, it's really easy to just focus on the people at the bottom, but the Dunning-Kruger effect has this other fascinating side to it. It turns out the experts get it wrong too, just in the complete opposite way. So here's the tale of two errors. On one end, you have the low performers who are just blissfully unaware of how badly they're doing. But on the other end, you have the top performers, and they're often unaware of how exceptionally good they are. They know they did well, but they really underestimate how much better they did than everyone else. And the why is totally different for each group. For the folks at the bottom, it's that double burden we talked about. They just can't see their own mistakes. But for the experts, it's a different bias, called the false consensus effect. Because the task felt easy to them, they just assume it must have been easy for everybody else too. So this brings up a really important question. If our confidence isn't based on our actual performance, then what is it based on? Where does that feeling of, I got this, or I'm terrible at this, even come from? Well, it turns out our feelings of confidence are usually based on these indirect and often pretty flawed clues. We rely on what we already believe about ourselves. I'm just a numbers person. We judge ourselves on how logical our method feels, even if the method is completely wrong. And we get a little confidence boost if a topic feels familiar, or if an answer pops into our head really fast, whether it's the right answer or not. And here is a perfect real-world example of this. In a study, men and women took a science quiz, and guess what? They performed equally well. Their scores were the same. But because of these societal stereotypes about who's good at science, the women rated their own performance as way worse than the men did. And that feeling, That perception gap, not their actual ability, made them less likely to want to sign up for a science competition later. Okay, so for all prone to this, is there a way out? Is there a way to see our own blind spots and get a more accurate view of ourselves? Well, yes, but the answer is a really interesting paradox. Check this out. Researchers did this super clever experiment. They took a group of people who did poorly on a logic test. At first, these folks rated their own performance way up around the 55th percentile. Then, the researchers gave them a little bit of training in the very logic skills they were missing. And after that, they asked them to go back and grade their original test. And what happened was amazing. Their self-assessment became way more accurate. It dropped way down. The training gave them the insight to finally see how poorly they had done before. And that's the paradox right there. The only way to get smart enough to see your own ignorance is, well, to get smarter. As you gain expertise, you also gain the tools to judge yourself accurately. The path out of ignorance is quite simply learning. So we'll leave you with this question, and this isn't about pointing the finger at other people. It's about turning the lens on ourselves. Whether it's your job, your finances, a hobby, even being a good friend, where might your confidence be a little out of sync with your actual competence? Just asking that question, that's the first and most powerful step towards real knowledge.